This is FightFans Radio.
Let's get ready to rumble! Oh my God! Unbelievable! Down goes Frazier! Down goes
Frazier! It's time! You're listening to New Mexico's only mixed martial arts and boxing podcast, The Low Blow, on AtomCombatSports.com and FightFans Radio. It's episode 133 of The Low Blow. I am Justin Goodham, joined by Jorge Hernandez. What's up, man?
Not much, man. Just talking to you live from a cellular phone.
Hey, man, as long as you're on the air, that counts. Anyway, any means necessary.
By any means necessary, exactly. How are you, man?
I'm good. I'm glad to be back home. Last week, we were at the Santa Ana Star Center, Rio Rancho, New Mexico, watching Bellator 91. So it was a crazy week last week with all the festivities. Before we get started here, first, you're listening to The Low Blow on Southwest Fight, USCombatSports.com, and FightFans Radio. But I want to give a shout out to Orthros Promotions, Sal and JR. They were really helpful in giving us any interviews you wanted. The great accommodations for the weigh-ins and the post-fight press conference, as well as the actual Bellator 91 event. So I want to give a special thanks to JR and Sal at Orthros Promotions. They're very helpful, and really the card they put on the local undercard was really good. I think every fight was awesome except the main event, which was Bellator took care of that. So Bellator 91, a great event.
How weird was that? The main event just stunk up the place, man.
Yeah, it was pretty terrible. I think, Mpumbu and Vey, they're not the best light heavyweights in the world. And plus, take a look at their layoffs and their injuries all came into play. So it pretty much made for a boring fight. Not to mention, that crowd got spoiled. I mean, I think you mentioned there's 8 out of 9 fights all, ended in a submission or knockout. So, when you have a main event that goes to a decision that's not really exciting, people are going to be pretty outraged about it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely agree with that. So it really just surprised me that those guys didn't come out with the energy. I mean, maybe they're, I don't know, maybe it was just the altitude that bugged them, man.
Yeah, maybe. I think they're talking about that at the post-fight press conference. And by the way, you can listen to that post-fight press conference. Even though Bellator 92 is going on as we speak, if you want to recap of what happened last week, that's on Stitcher and on iTunes. That has our thoughts on Bellator 91 along with the post-fight press conference. On today's show, we're going to have Tony Whitby of the Punches and Bunches podcast. He's going to talk about what Arizona's doing with their fight scene, really putting on these shows called Iron Boy Promotions. These shows have really kind of taken Arizona by storm, and they got an event coming up this Saturday, Iron Boy 6, live from the Celebrity Theater. Trying to think where in Arizona it is, because on the website, it's just Arizona. I think I dare to say Phoenix.
It's in
not
Phoenix. It's in Central Phoenix. So
okay, so it's a loaded card full of Southwestern fighters from Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico. I don't think it's on pay-per-view at all, so you have to be in Arizona to check it out. But really, we're going to talk to Tony about that. We're also going to talk to Carlos Castro, who's going to be fighting on that card. He has a very interesting story, and Jorge wrote a piece about Carlos about a year ago about his story to becoming a top prospect in the sport of boxing. I believe he's 3-0, has a fight this weekend, has a great amateur record, so we'll talk to him about that. So, man, before we get into the standing 5 count, because at 8:20 we're going to have Tony on, hopefully, I want to get your thoughts on the latest news concerning Holly Holm. She won her fight last week against Katie Merle. Pretty easy victory for her in the cage. Now she transitions back to the squared circle, as she'll fight Mary McGee on May 11th from the Route 66 Casino. I think I immediately texted you my thoughts once I heard this news. I wasn't very pleased. How about yourself, Jorge? We're supposed to have Mary McGee on, but unfortunately we couldn't pull that off. But hopefully we'll have her on in the future. But just your thoughts on McGee as an opponent and Holly Holm really taking this fight at all. Is there any benefit of fighting McGee? It seems like she has a decent record, has some buzz, But in terms of Holm and what she should gain in 2013, is this the wisest move to take this fight?
I think just as far as who might be one of the next best opponents, I mean, Mary McGee was obviously on the list of those three opponents that they can possibly, take on. But McGee is a young fighter. She fights out of Indiana, record of 20-1. So it'd be just a decent test just to see where she's at age-wise. I mean, I don't think she'll have any problem outboxing Mary McGee. As mentioned, she's 20-1. Decent knockout percentage, 50%, which isn't bad for a female's boxing. And she's a 26-year-old, so 26-year-old with a lot of life and in her boxing abilities is what I mean. And she's actually ready to come out. And I think before this fight was presented to Mary McGee, but she actually turned it down. Probably feeling that she wasn't ready. She actually defeated another local fighter by the name of Victoria Cisneros in December on the Holly Holm Diana Prozic light welterweight championship fight. So Mary McGee is someone that we've seen at the same venue, so I don't see her having much trouble in actually acclimating herself to the elevation. She knows what she's getting into. So I know you're not thrilled with it, but it's, if it's not Cecilia Braekhus, this might be one of the next three opponents that Holly, would need to face, especially to defend the light welterweight title.
At this thing now, and I don't want to spend too much time because we got the standing 5 count, but I'll just say this. I think, she gained a lot of national recognition last week, at least on Twitter, people watching her fight, on the internet. She was very impressive. I think now with the UFC focusing on 135, with the women, you have to strike where the iron's hot. And I just think taking these fights where you never know, she could get hurt, she could lose, her value could drop. I just don't see the benefit of her, not either fighting Anne-Sophie Matisse, in a rubber match or taking on Braekhus, Braekhus in either Vegas or here or on her home turf. I just don't see a viable future in Holly Holm just fighting, these up-and-comers if she's only going to, not even sell out the arena. I mean, didn't you say it was about 80-85% filled her last fight against Diana Prozic?
Yeah, no, that was actually pretty filled. I mean, I'd be mistaken if I said 80-85, maybe 90%. Maybe it was probably close to sell it. It was a decent amount. It wasn't completely sold out, but there was a fair amount of people. The undercard, wasn't a stellar undercard either. Not many people knew who Diana Prozic even was. So, yeah, you're right about that, about, trying to fill up those seats. And when it comes to Fresquez, they usually give young up-and-coming fighters a chance on the undercard, so you're not going to see a Fidel Maldonado or a Archie Ray Marcus, who are the two most talented fighters here in Albuquerque, on the card, just because Fresquez usually tries to give these younger up-and-coming fighters. And, Holly's the attraction, Holly's the show for them. So let's not forget, Cecilia Braekhus on her end, she's not taking stellar competition either.
No, she's not. No, for sure. You're right.
She's got to fight with Mia St. John. The Mia St. John fight is a couple of steps lower than Mary McGee. You know what I mean?
Let's be honest, it's a joke, right? Come on now.
Yeah, no, it truly is a joke. And actually, a couple of weeks ago, I had actually emailed Cecilia Braekhus' manager, and they finally got back to me yesterday, as a matter of fact, man. And I had asked her in the email, and I'll probably post that sometime this weekend or sometime tomorrow, the Q&A that I had about why she chose Mia St. John, who's 45 years old, man, almost double the age of Mary McGee, who Holly Holm is fighting. And she said that she wants to fight her before she retires because she's a legend. Kind of a cop-out answer, if you ask me, man.
Pretty much. Yep, and with that, we'll move on to the standing 5 count, which usually sometimes is a standing 8 count, depending on the guest on a show. Basically, the standing 5 count this week is our top 5 stories of mixed martial arts and boxing. So let's get into it. The first story with Alistair Overeem being injured and out of UFC 160 against Junior Dos Santos. I think it was reported today that Overeem will face Dos Santos later this summer. The injury is only 4 to 6 weeks. It seems like it's not that serious. Thank goodness. I think if this was last year in 2012, Overeem would be out the entire year, the way the UFC's injury streak was going on. So definitely, it's not the best news, but I don't think it's a horrible news since the fight will still go on later this summer.
And then boxing news, Adrian Broner, who's quote unquote, the next Floyd Mayweather is possibly to make a return June 15th against Ricky Burns. So according to the Ring's website, Golden Boy CEO Richard Schaefer said that the WBC lightweight champion Adrian Broner, regarded as one of the best fighters in the world, is expected to return against Burns. Both guys have almost made the fight before. They almost actually got into the ring in February. So I'd hope the fight does definitely go down. Ricky Burns is a decent fighter out of the UK. He's ranked, probably in the top 5 by most ranking systems at that weight class. He's 35-2. The guy only has 10 knockouts. So, not the biggest threat to, to dethrone Adrian Broner, but nonetheless, Adrian Broner would get the chance to add one other name under his belt.
This story has been making news in women's MMA, and is not Ronda Rousey. Instead, it's a female transgendered fighter under investigation by the Florida State Boxing Commission. This has gotten a lot of news, especially on ESPN, ESPN.com. Basically, they're working to see if they can give Fallon Fox a boxing license to fight in the state of Florida. She's supposed to fight in, I think, a featherweight tournament. Because of this news that she failed to disclose that she went under gender replacement therapy, gender realignment surgery, in 2006, along with supplemental hormonal therapy. Fox has gotten under review, and that tournament has been canceled, according to ESPN's Franklin McNeil, or at least placed on a postponed. So right now, it's a very interesting story. A lot of controversy whether or not Fallon Fox should get a license or not from the Florida State Athletic Commission. So I think this has ramifications if they do give her a license. I think the other states might have to follow suit. So we'll see what happens there.
How weird is this story, dude?
It's pretty crazy, man. I don't know really what to think about it. I think because you're dealing, compared to like team sports with basketball, even football, baseball, here you're dealing, two combatants inflicting damage upon each other. So if you have one fighter who was once a man, you have to wonder if it's true about a physical strength advantage against a woman. You have to see where that lies. I'm not a doctor, and I'm a novice on the subject. So I would like to see some evidence to at least investigate if the basic question is, does Fallon Fox have an advantage over her opponents because she's transgender? That's the question. And I don't have an answer for that. So I think once they find that out, I think you'll come to a resolution.
Yeah, it's just a pretty eerie story for me, man, when it does come down to it. So, yeah. Hopefully they get that figured out. But, another good news, and not so weird news, Andre Ward is actually back in the gym after having a shoulder surgery. So he's back in the gym. He did cancel a January date with Kelly Pavlik for the super middleweight championship, but it looks like he is, making decent recovery and is in no rush to come back, and he shouldn't. A boxer as great as he is, let him preserve himself so we can continue to see his greatness. So, all the best to Andre Ward, and hopefully he comes back, sooner rather than later, but a lot healthier than he was before.
And really, other UFC news, and this main news, because the UFC was in New York trying to get mixed martial arts legal in the state of New York. Chris Weidman was one of the members with the UFC trying to get the sport passed, along with Ronda Rousey. But Weidman made news for another reason, that looks like he's been confirmed to fight Anderson Silva for the middleweight title for UFC 162 July 6th. So the big-time summer show for the UFC, it seems like Chris Weidman has got his wish and will fight the Spider in the summertime. So there's hesitation in Anderson Silva's camp on giving Weidman the title shot because he's not a big, well-known name, but highly dangerous. And a lot of insiders are picking Weidman to win this fight. But nevertheless, Silva's people and the UFC have come to a resolution to fight Chris Weidman on July 6th. So that's a fight to look forward to. I don't know how, in terms of getting casual fan buzz, how it's going to work. Chris Weidman's not the most compelling personality. He's shown a little bit more personality the last, I dare to say, maybe a couple of weeks in terms of him trying to get a title opportunity. But for now, it seems seems like he's got his wish. So hopefully he'll keep up the trash talk and not go into seclusion.
I know it's a little early, but how do you feel about that fight?
I like it a lot. I still like Anderson Silva. I know the hipster pick is to pick Chris Weidman, but I haven't seen Chris Weidman fight that number one contender in that middleweight division. We really haven't seen that match yet. I think, compared to John Jones, a lot of people are comparing Weidman to John Jones. I don't know. I think Weidman's very impressive, and he does have a style to beat Anderson Silva. I just think in this type of environment, which, this is a big title fight, I don't know. I like Anderson. We've never seen Anderson Silva hurt. We've seen him under duress and take huge amounts of punishment, but never to where he's on the brink of being finished. So we'll see what happens. Looks like, Jorge, we have our first guest on the line.
Yeah, and joining us now is the host of Punches and Bunches podcast on Wednesday nights, live out of Arizona, Tony Whitby. How you doing, Tony?
Hey, what's going on, gentlemen?
Not much, man. Looks like you guys are going to be pretty busy this weekend, and sounds like you were pretty busy this week just helping, promote the guys here with Iron Boy Promotions. What can you tell us about the event, man?
Yeah, one thing Iron Boy is known for, number one, this is their sixth event, which is why it's titled Six. One thing is, covering the Arizona boxing, I really like how they do a mixture of pro-am fights, and then they go into these professional fights. So the amateur fights that they have kind of really, the appetizers before the meal of events. They have a real strong following. They use the same venue every time, man, so they have a really good deal going on there. So they're not trying to mess it up. They do very well. They're still a young company, Iron Boy is, and you can tell that, they learn with every show that they do. But everything's tightening up, if you will. Every show kind of escalates and gets a little bit better than the last one. And their matchmaking, Mike Sanchez is one of the premier matchmakers in the area, man. He definitely knows what he's doing. So it's going to be a fun night of events. The buzz around town is, Victor Castro is going to be on here. Carlos Castro is another kid that just fights with all heart. Chris Lopez is a fan favorite as well. It's going to be a great night of fights.
And also, when it comes to a lot of those guys, I mean, they're young up-and-coming fighters. Tell us about the, resurgence, I guess, in a way, of Arizona boxing, just because, the last, I guess, world-renowned boxer I remember coming from the era is Marco Carvajal, who was a world champion. So talk about the next generation of guys.
Yeah, if you had to go in chronological order since Carvajal, there was a lot of steam in Jesus Ernesto Gonzalez, and then obviously the youngest one that's probably the most known now is Jose Benavidez Jr. But if you take those names aside and you just go into some of these gems, 2, 3, 4 years ago, and you start to see some of these guys that are now, 18 to 22 years old, that crop of generations, and specifically if I had to pinpoint a weight class, it would be everything from, featherweight, to 115 pounds to 126 pounds. Just that area in Phoenix, if you're a bantamweight fighter and you need some sparring, Phoenix isn't a bad place to come out to. And I mean, Alexis Santiago is another one. Emilio Garcia, I know he's not on this card as well, but these are the names that are really driving the sport locally. A lot of these boxers really are getting their own fan base and creating their own crowds, generating, every time sellout shows. There's definitely a market here in Arizona. You just really got to know how to corner them in and kind of sell them on what you have. And once you can figure that out, you're going to have a great night of fights.
And Tony, can you give us some insight as to the history of Iron Boy Promotions, how it got started, and how does it differ from other fight shows in Arizona and in the Phoenix area?
Well, to be honest with you, one of the things that I found kind of interesting is for me, when they first came out on the scene, I kind of felt that like they came out of nowhere. Commonly we have little upstarts here and there, with a lot of people with a lot of promises of saying we're going to do X amount of fights here and there. But between Sam and Robert, they've kind of built a really good core of learning at the same time as you go. and really kind of taking their time with this. If I had to give them one, I guess kudos as a promoter is they're okay with showing humility, where, obviously in the fight game, a lot of people won't do that. And what I mean by that is they know they're brand new. They know that they're young, and then they're okay with it. And as they get going, I mean, they've had, Arizona stars with Abel Ronalds on their fight cards. Alexis Santiago is a big name in Arizona. They can really draw out these crowds. This is their 6th event, so how do I say this? They've only been on the scene for, gentlemen, maybe a year and a half. So they've really made large strides. They're very consistent, which I got to be honest, when it comes to boxing is a rarity, but they're solid with their shows. Every quarter you're going to get at least an Iron Boy show in Arizona, and with the same venue, if it's not broke, you don't need to fix it. Consistency is key, and that's what they're running with.
Yeah, and obviously they're, doing good things if they're making noise. Local show is making noise all the way out here to Albuquerque. So as far as the fight card, find it kind of interesting that you guys are that same night, you're also going to be having a former Olympian make his professional debut in Michael Hunter, right?
Yes, he's actually going to be on that card as well. We had him on the show a couple of weeks ago. He's a great gentleman, man. He's a guy that if you ever get a chance to talk to him, you just want an extra 5 minutes so you can hear more of his story.
Yeah. Also, when it comes to, you talk about the next major star that's coming out of that area, and you mentioned Jose Benavidez Jr. His last fight, he had a pretty tough outing in the last round. What do you see out of this guy? Do you think he's your next world champion?
Some would definitely want to believe that is the case. Others would be skeptical because of his fight against Miranda. It all depends on who you ask. His fan base will definitely tell you, it's a good learning, it's a stepping stone for him. In my opinion, I think so. With how much backing he has behind him, as long as he stays, consistently in the ring. I know he's had some time off recently. Just the kid himself, he has so many tactical skills out there with his power, his jab, his footwork. It's almost hard to believe that he would have to kind of make some bad decisions in order for him not to become a champion. He really has a lot of things driving him, behind. He's not just the only one on that bus. So there's a lot of stock in this kid from all different angles. So one would like to believe that it's only a matter of time. But to be honest with you, you got to get in the ring consistently in order for you to get those opportunities. And right now, he's taken a step back. I've been told that he's recently been back in the gym, but I haven't been able to confirm that.
Can you describe, Tony, the Arizona fight scene in terms of media attention? I know here in Albuquerque, even though there is a healthy fight community, it's tough to get media attention sometimes here. Do you find it the same way in Arizona, or do you think the media has kind of embraced the fight scene there?
Well, I got to say that I guess from the outside looking in, I've always kind of felt like New Mexico's had their hardcore, fight fans have just been, they're deeply rooted into the fight game. But outside of that, much like Arizona, if you're not close to that source, tapping that vein, if you kind of take a step back, you're absolutely right. Getting media attention is not always the easiest thing to do. When it is done, it's not given the spectacular attention that it sometimes deserves. In boxing and in much of sports, there's so many different stories that you can go to. You can pick any one of these fighters on this fight card, talk to them for 20 minutes, and you could easily pull a 1,000-word article on there and really get some attention on there. But the fact of the matter is the main public going to actually thrive for that and request for it? And unfortunately, it's not always the case. You really got to throw a lot of ammunition out there, a lot of different things, many different angles, marketing out there to really get it going. Speaking on this card, you have some females fighting down there. You got a high school kid that's a junior, a female, Ariel Diaz. She's on this fight card, and I find that interesting as well. There's just so many different little things that you can go into. Like you said, Michael Hunter's making his pro debut. You really got to hit it on many different facets to make it a big show. It's really tough. If you can't get past that first step, then you're really only dealing with your niche market.
How big of a role do you think the small shows like this, especially incorporating the amateur aspect into it, play in, I guess, reviving boxing into the mainstream sports market?
Well, in my opinion, I mentioned from the very beginning, I like having one or two bouts as far as pro-am fights to start off the night. When you have that type of mentality, not only are you saying, as professional fighters and as a professional promoter, we are promoting the amateur events, that allows the promoter to stay close to the source of the next crop. That allows the amateur fighters to gain additional experience. So when they do become pro, they've really gained a little bit of fan base in there as well. They kind of get used and accustomed to bigger venues and different types of, the certain locker rooms that you're going to stay in if you're going to work and continue to fight in those same areas. So you kind of get accustomed to those type of things. I think it's a huge advantage to have something like that. Not only that, those families that are going to be invested in those amateur kids, they're going to stay and watch some of these other fights as well. And if you got to think of a trickle-down effect, once their kids stay pro, then they're going to see the amateur event as it goes on, so it kind of carries over. I think it's very important to continually to feed each other, kind of give and take between professionals and the amateurs. I know for me personally, I've always been covering more of the professional fights, and I've always kind of felt a little guilty saying, hey, look, I don't always have myself that in tune with, the very young amateurs. I kind of wait till they get into their late teens and then make sure that that's where they're going to go, just so I know that I'm close to it. But I think it's vital. If anything, it's definitely vital.
Tony, since you keep your finger on the pulse of the boxing scene, I just want to get your thoughts on the latest matchup that's really got hardcore fans here in, I guess, New Mexico really excited. Austin Trout versus Canelo Alvarez in late April. Can you just give us your thoughts on that fight? Your thoughts on, it was supposed to be on the Mayweather undercard, but it got moved to its own show on late April. Just your thoughts on Trout versus Canelo.
One thing about that fight, for me personally, I've been a big Austin Trout fan for a really long time. I've always been real accustomed to fighters from the Southwest. That's just something in my blood and my nature to do so. We had Austin on a couple months ago, and he was blatantly stating, he definitely wants to, get in the ring with Canelo. Obviously, we know the story that he beat his older brother. There's definitely backing, story behind this fight, which I really find interesting in this situation where, for a while we didn't know if this fight was going to get made. It seemed very backdoorish. We're not really sure yet. Now that it is, Canelo's going to go out there and say, look, I always wanted this fight the entire time, and I've been calling for it. And maybe he has. Maybe if we give him the benefit of the doubt, good for him. I'm glad that he has. He's calling his shot, much like Austin Trout is calling his. Stylistically, I think this is a very even matchup in a sense. On the experience as far as stage presence, Canelo's probably going to have that in his favor. At the same time, Austin Trout's never backed down from a fight. He's willing to go anywhere on earth to fight somebody. He's proven that. If you can fight, a Puerto Rican inside Madison Square Garden, man, I don't think you're going to show fear, fighting in San Antonio. I like the fight a lot. I don't know who I'm picking. My heart wants to say Austin Trout's going to get it. I know I'm going against it, but I got to go with my Southwest Spider-Man, and more likely I'm picking Trout based off the styles. But we'll see. I don't know. What are your takes on it?
Oh man, we're pretty biased ourselves, but I think Canelo hasn't showed too much footwork or seeing. He's a freight trainer. He's going to go straight at you. We haven't seen too much of his lateral movement against a lot of the guys he's fighting against. So I think Trout would be able to outbox him and move around the outside fairly well against him. I think the fight against Miguel Cotto was a good, I guess, not necessarily a blueprint, but a good precursor to what might happen in this next bout. But the thing we don't know is how Austin Trout's chin is going to hold up to the power that Canelo Alvarez packs. But Trout hasn't fought, I guess, too many elite fighters. He did dismantle, Miguel Cotto. But it's just going to be. We're going to have to see how he handles the punch, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also he's already battle-tested, like Jorge said, fighting in Madison Square Garden. And I think also he doesn't care if he makes the fight ugly. I don't think he's there to be the most crowd-pleasing fighter in the world as long as he gets the W. I think that's all that matters to him. So second your guys' opinion. I really like Austin Trout in this fight.
I think we're 3-0, man.
What do you think about the idea that, I mean, he's already going to be down 7-8 rounds on the scorecard going into this fight. He's going to really have to do some razzle and dazzle in order for him to win this fight. The one thing about Canelo that we notice is that if you watch him round after round, he kind of fights in spurts where he'll take some time in the ring, well, he won't be throwing a lot of punches, and then all of a sudden, he'll just start throwing, multiple punches, multiple combinations, where he just kind of wakes up. He kind of falls asleep. Maybe he's just kind of testing out his opponent, but then in every round, at some point, I mean, this is why we like watching the kid fight, because, I mean, he is in entertaining fights, but, he kind of takes his time, it's real methodical, and then at some point in the round, he's going to start throwing his bombs. And if you're not going to be able to get out of the way, you're going to be in for a fight. And to me, I think the one adamant thing that we need to talk about is, look, he's really going to be fighting a person at 154 pounds. He's not used to doing that. He's taken some time off. In my opinion, he should have took that fight in December, even if it was a money fight in Mexico, just to stay loose. Went and take some money in Mexico, man. Take that fight in Mexico City or anywhere else. Be accustomed to your fan base. Do what you got to do. Stay in the gyms out there, and as opposed to, I'm going to wait till this big shot come around, and now, I'm going to be out. He hasn't fought since September, so I'm edging with Trout, but I want to hear how these camps are going, everything in there. I want to see if Louis Burke drops anything as well, and maybe we can, as time gets closer, I'll get a better idea who I'm going to be predicting.
Yeah, and Tony, I've told these guys before, don't be surprised by what the Texas Commission does. I mean, these guys are unbelievable with the commission and the judges there. Let's not forget what happened to Paul Malignaggi when he fought Juan Diaz. I thought Malignaggi pulled off that victory, and you fight the fighter on the road, and it's a pretty tough win there.
Yeah, real quick, guys. I got to admit something here. If you remember that fight, and that is Gil Van Hoy basically robbed Malignaggi of the decision. When people, and this is a rare thing, it's kind of a joke that I mentioned to people, is when people sit there and say that, bad calls, bad judging doesn't help with the fans, that's actually the fight that made me the hardcore fan to actually start taking pen to paper and start writing. And that really got me into the scene. That was the fight that lit the seeds behind me that I just got so upset as being a fight fan that I needed to do something about it. So I started talking about that fight and started writing for a couple of websites. So that fight, it means a lot to me. Even though Polly lost it, I commend it because that's what actually got me into actually writing and now having my own show.
That's a pretty crazy coincidence, man. So go ahead and talk about your show. There's Punches and Bunches that's on Wednesday nights. How did it come about, and how long has it been going strong for?
Oh well, as I was stating, kind of going into it from after writing for a couple of different websites, and I'd have to start specifically Boxing IQs, where I made my home as a writer, boxing columnist. I had an idea of a weekly column, Punches and Bunches. It's just, to me, it sounded great. It sounded catchy, and it was just a big, big giant soup bowl of just everything that you could hit out. It was, imagine, 55 different topics and 140 characters or less. It wasn't into it. I'm just stating real short, quick, snappy little 1-2s on what was happening in the fight game. Either, what fights I liked coming up, any jokes that were happening, anything that was kind of funny in there. It was a little lighthearted, but at the same time, I would kind of throw in my 2 cents in the game. I gained a lot of fan base in the Phoenix area because I mentioned the Phoenix fights. One thing to note is I would kind of joke around. At the time, Chavez Jr. was fighting a bunch of nobodies, and I would mention that I've never met a Chavez Jr. fan. Please, somebody, here's my email address. Contact me if anybody knows. Never met one. As popular as people say he is, I've never met a Chavez Jr. fan. And lo and behold, that's what did it. As soon as I let out my email address, I realized that there was a large contingency of people, not just Chavez fans, but just people that were saying that they loved reading the articles, every week. It got to a point where I was turning them into 2,000-word articles, just constantly taking up my entire Sunday to get them out. And I was always a big fan of boxing radio, and I got to be honest, I would spend 40 to 60 hours a week listening to boxing radio. I'm that big of a boxing zombie, I've been called. So I pay all homage and credit to Leave It in the Ring Radio, Dave Duenas, because I was listening to him and Gabe Montoya go back and forth one day, and he was kind of going back and talking about fans that write, and if you're not going to do something positive for the sport, then get out of it. But that kind of spoke to me in the sense where I said, you know what, I'm going to do my own radio show. So I did a lot of research. I hooked up with Alex Coa with MaxBoxing.com. He does a show every Tuesday night, and I do mine on Wednesdays. We have some fans out in California. They do their show on Sundays. So we do a little what we call Max Boxing Radio Network. So we kind of all lease out the radio show. Mine's on Wednesday nights. It's from 10 p.m. to midnight, and we're moving to Pacific Standard Time starting next week. We've been going a little over a year now. I think we're on round 56, so a year and a month. And it's been a lot of fun. I mean, we've had some great guests come on the show. We kind of mix it up similar to how I do the column. I like to have fun. We keep it light. We joke around. We get serious at times. We've had Gabe Montoya on the show talking about PEDs. We've had Al Bernstein coming on just, shooting the shit with us. And so, I mean, it's been a lot of fun in that sense. My co-host, Ron Valderrama, I couldn't do the show without him. He's the backbone of the show. I admit that he does a lot of things behind the scenes. A lot of people just think, it's your show. It's definitely mine and Ron's. Eventually we'll get some other things going. And I've seen you guys' website, man. I love it. I got to admit that, after this, I'm sure I'd like to have a conversation with you guys. But I love it, man. Everything right now in boxing is good. Want to keep it positive. And when it comes to the Southwest, there's a lot of fighters out there that don't get the recognition that they should. I mean, for me, one of my favorite guys, I know anytime I see Hector Munoz, man, I know he's going to be in a fun fight. I mean, just speaking of somebody from New Mexico.
Yeah, that's a great point. But, Tony, it was a pleasure to have you on, man. And, we'd love to have you on the show once again. You're full of knowledge, and it was fun, man.
Hey, anytime you guys want me, man, you guys know how to contact me. Thank you guys for having me on. It was definitely an honor. Appreciate it.
All right, Tony Whitby, ladies and gentlemen, punches and bunches. Have a good night, man.
Thank you.
That was Tony Whitby. Make sure to catch him on the Max Boxing Radio Network, man. It's a great interview.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. Guys are pretty knowledgeable. I enjoy watching his show. It's on kind of late, and when he says 10, he means 10 Mountain, so it's midnight out east by the time those guys are on.
Wow, just late night boxing talk. I'm sure that'll keep everybody awake. While we're waiting for Carlos Castro to get on the phone here, Jorge, I just want to get your thoughts on some, big time MMA news to some people. One is mixed martial arts being legalized in New York. It passed through the Senate and now is waiting to be put through the Assembly floor in New York. That's been the hang-up before if the Assembly will vote on it. It's kind of bizarre that you can't vote on a law. You have the Assembly approve it first. So that's going on. And in the UFC, being on this new Fox Sports channel, there's going to be no more Speed Channel in August. It's going to be Fox Sports 1, and then if the old TV is going to be Fox Sports 2. So which of those stories do you think is catching your eye right now? Do you think, if the Fox Sports Channel does appear to be a challenger for ESPN, could the UFC benefit in the long term?
No, it can definitely benefit, and I enjoy it. I mean, it's good to have other alternatives, especially for some of these networks that are willing to put these other sports on, like MMA, like a little bit more of boxing. Especially, the ESPN, they invited several famous mixed martial artists Fox Sports 1 invited a lot of famous mixed martial artists to, I guess, their debut or whatever you would call it, the launch, the official, ceremony to announce the launching of the network. So I actually enjoy that. As far as the bigger of the stories, it has to be the MMA in, the media hub of the world, of the United States, there in New York. So to see MMA in the Garden, man, that would be incredible, and I'd see them doing maybe 3-4 shows a year there in New York. So it's going to be pretty awesome to actually see the UFC Octagon there in the middle of Madison Square Garden, a legendary venue for boxing. I know a lot of boxing purists might be upset about seeing a cage in there, but it deserves its time on the stage, and it's well overdue.
Yeah, and not only, Madison Square Garden, but you have the Barclays Center, you have Albany, Buffalo, you have all different places in New York that opens up a wide range of opportunities there. I kind of want to, since we're waiting on Carlos Castro to come on here, I guess it's no better time than now to preview Bernard Hopkins against Tavoris Cloud. Hopkins pretty much, since Randy Couture retired, pretty much the only combat sports athlete, in his 40s, really fighting at a higher level and not, I guess, imploring the wrath of hardcore fans, trying to get him to retire. He does have a loss. His last loss was to Chad Dawson. It was the rematch, if you remember, kind of the takedown attempt by Chad Dawson injuring Bernard Hopkins. But he did get the rematch. Chad Dawson won a majority decision. Now it's last year, around this time, April 28th. Your thoughts on this fight against Tavoris Cloud? Cloud is undefeated. I guess he had the controversial fight against Gabriel Campello. Can you just talk about this fight, Jorge, in terms of can Bernard Hopkins fight at a high level still? Not only that, what does he have to prove, in the sport of boxing? I mean, he's done pretty much everything. Is this just for him collecting belts, or does he really want one more pay-per-view payday? I mean, what is the end game for Bernard Hopkins?
I think it's just to prove to everybody that he still got it. I mean, the guy missed, his a couple of formidable years because he was locked up and locked away. And he just wants to show that he can compete with these younger guys. It's not like he's facing these guys in their late 30s that are age-wise comparable to him. These guys are young. These guys are 10, 15, sometimes even 20 years younger than he is. And as far as Tavoris Cloud, as you mentioned, he did have a very controversial victory over Gabriel Campillo. I thought Gabriel actually won that fight rather easily. I had it 8-4 at worst for Gabriel Campillo, and they robbed him. Guess what the fight happened? Texas, man. I'm telling you, I don't know what they're doing down there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that commission, they've had troubles with mixed martial arts too, so it's not just the boxing thing. That's for sure. I guess, and this fight, as mentioned, there's probably most people know, and as you mentioned, it's actually a world championship fight. This is for Tavares' Cloud IBF Light Heavyweight Championship. So for Bernard Hopkins to add another championship, man, at 48 years old, it's that might be the story of the year in sports so far. Besides, maybe Ronda Rousey or whatever else happens in the year. This Bernard Hopkins story. If he was to pull this off and win a title at 48 years old, who knows? He might even reign until he's 50, man. Well, I think that might be the goal. I don't know if you heard this, Jorge, but I don't think he'll match the record of wrestling legend Mae Young. I don't know if you ever heard of her or not, Jorge, but she wants to have a match when she's 100. She's 90 now. She had her 90th birthday this past Monday, and her goal is to have a match when she's 100. So I don't know if Bernard Hopkins is following in her footsteps. I don't know if he'll be in the ring when he's 100. He'll call out the big young lion 50 years from now once he turns the triple digits there, man.
How far down the line? I mean, I can't think of my life beyond the age of 50, man. I don't know how these people are still kicking. Mae Young, as you mentioned, she was an old school wrestler, right?
Yep, old school, yeah, real old school for sure.
I remember they pull her out in the 90s as just a random character. Did she still act with the WWE? Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
not act,
I think
wrestle.
It was old school Raw this past. I won't get into pro wrestling talk, but anyway, basically Monday night the WWE honored her with her 90th birthday, and they gave her a championship belt and they kind of honored her. She's kind of friends with the promotion, so she turned a big milestone. I think Vince McMahon wanted to have her there to celebrate it.
Jay, one thing that is pretty interesting to me, I don't know if you've seen the photos that have been posted up. U.S. Combat Sports just posted a photo that Gracie Baja in New Mexico actually posted earlier. John Jones has actually joined the Gracie Baja gym here in Albuquerque.
I did. I saw that. Yep.
It's kind of weird to see him with the white belt, in a white gi. It's really strange to see, but you got some world-class guys there at the Gracie Baja gym. Roberto Tusa Alencar, who is currently the no-gi world champion at the heavyweight division, standing with his black belt next to John Jones wearing a white belt. It's a pretty funny picture, man. Well, it's not funny. It's pretty awesome, to be honest.
Yeah, I think, when you first look at it, you're like, man, John Jones is a white belt. He must be terrible on the ground. But let's remember, this guy made his MMA debut fairly recently, and the way this guy acquires knowledge, it's pretty incredible. It wouldn't really surprise me if he goes through the ranks pretty quickly. I'm not going to suggest he's a black belt in 2 years by any means, but certainly, him earning those stripes, it would not surprise me if he just rolls through those tests pretty quickly. I just think John Jones is this his ability to retain and apply what he learns in training sessions is a talent and a gift that I think it's not really appreciated in the sport of MMA. I think it's a talent that gets overlooked compared to his physical gifts, and I think it's his secret weapon, in my opinion. So, him doing this, I think it's really a blessing in disguise. When you first look at the picture, you're like, oh man, John Jones, look at his scrub. He knows nothing about jiu-jitsu. He's a white belt. But I think you'll quickly see him. He won't be a white belt for long. I'll just put it that way.
Do you find it pretty interesting that he's doing it this close to the fight? Are you surprised that he didn't do it a little sooner?
No. I think against Chael Sonnen, I don't see them getting into an Abu Dhabi grappling match. And I think what surprised me is him not getting the belt system through, Greg Jackson. I don't know, maybe he wanted to go to a pure jiu-jitsu source, but I don't know. I'm surprised he put himself out there like that to, be kind of subjugated to public ridicule in terms of him being a white belt. I think that's pretty brave on his part. I'm sure there's a lot of people on Twitter kind of taking shots at him.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting that Gracie Barra Gym is actually bringing a few guys along. Isaac Valley Flag, former Strikeforce, now UFC fighter, is now training out there. Diego Brandao is another guy. Clay Guida is another UFC guy. Quinn Mulhern. It's just loaded, that Gracie Barra, New Mexico gym of local talent on there. So, it's pretty interesting to see, and we'll see how he does, just trends. It's just incredible that a fighter that talented is just adding another arsenal to his repertoire, man. He's going to be scary a year and a half from now.
Yeah, totally
he
agree.
Isn't already.
Let's see. Let's discuss real quickly this whole John Jones. I have John Jones on the brain here, but Nick Diaz, George St. Pierre. They got into it on the conference call today. Their fight's in next week. Seems like before this conference call, both these guys were pretty respectful for each other, but it just hit the fan today with both guys disrespecting each other. I want to go in a rant because I think you guys know where I stand with Nick Diaz. But in terms of this fight, is it going to be true that George St. Pierre is going to fight any harder than he does normally? Even though he might truly highly dislike this guy, are we going to see really George St. Pierre, turn that into actually, beating the crap out of Nick Diaz? Or are you just going to – this is going to be just a regular bout for George St. Pierre in which he's focused on winning first? He put it to Carlos Condit. He didn't hate Carlos Condit. He wanted to win. So where does his emotion fit into him performing next Saturday night?
Well, we've never seen him in this type of position where he generally – if it's not hate, it's a strong dislike of another individual this way. So it'll be interesting to see. This is the biggest test for George mentally. And if he passes this test, he's going to be known. He's already going down as one of the greatest. But if he can pass this type of emotional and mental test, then he's going to go down as one of 5-10 greatest fighters of all time. So where he will be, his stability, his mindset will be at the time of the fight. That's yet to be determined. But it's obvious that Nick Diaz has gotten under his skin, and I don't know if we're ready to see a pissed off George St. Pierre. Who knows? He might be better than a just regularly composed St. Pierre. So we'll see what the rage does with St. Pierre, or if it even translates over into rage, or if he's a true mixed martial artist, he'll stay composed. But when it's a strong dislike and hatred for a person, we tend to do crazy stuff, and we tend to be thrown off specific game plans, man.
Yeah, I agree with you. Just real quickly, I guess we're still trying to get Carlos Castro. I just want to get your thoughts on UFC on Fuel from Japan, man. Vanderlei Silva turning back the clock, defeating Brian Stan. Mark Hunt coming from behind to defeat Stefan Struve. Diego Sanchez winning a controversial decision over Takanori Gomi. I had Gomi winning that fight 2-1. It seems like Twitter was agreeing with my assessment of that fight. Just your thoughts on, Vanderlei, Mark Hunt maybe getting a title shot in 2013. And is Diego Sanchez, is he past his prime? Do you think his best days are behind him? Do you think this could be a resurgence for a better Diego at 155?
we hope it's a resurgence because I feel the same way you do about that fight. I actually scored it 2-1. I'm not going to lie. I was also watching the Sharif O'Gary and Richard Abril lightweight championship fight at the same time. So I was going back and forth. But I thought, from what I was watching, I thought Gomi, he not necessarily at 100% won that fight, but it was pretty obvious to me that Gomi was controlling that fight. I mean, the first round was something else, obviously. But, I mean, we'd hope so. He had a big weight cut, Diego Sanchez, for this, and hopefully this does get him in the rhythm of having him stay in the gym. But if he's going to make another title run, I don't know, man. His strong years may actually be behind him. As far as Mark Hunt, how awesome was that walk-off? Did that not remind you of Ken Griffey Jr. or Barry Bonds just walking to first base after they know they've just gotten a hold of one?
Yeah, that was the definition of swagger, man. Just unbelievable knockout. I'm surprised he didn't stay on him just to, kind of get the victory. I think, I agree with Frank Mir's mantra of, the fight's not over until the ref pulls me off of him. It's not just because the guy taps or if he's not unconscious. The fight's not over until the ref waves his hands. I mean, that's just the truth, as gruesome that may sound. So,
did it surprise you that Herb Dean actually stopped that?
No, I think he saw, Stefan Struve's jaw that was dislocated and the tooth that was lodged, I think, in his cheeks. So I think that's what he ultimately decided to stop the fight. I think it was because of those two things. That's what I heard. That's the rumor going around the block. I can't really get confirmation of that. I'm sure Eric will find out, but I'm pretty sure he saw the two injuries happening to Stefan Struve and he decided to call it a day.
Mm-hmm. And as far as the other fights, the main event, man, now that you actually bring that up, how crazy was that?
Yeah, round of the year for sure, man. I think with Brian Stann, I'm not really surprised he did that. He said that Vanderlei Silva was kind of an idol of his, and so what better? With Brian Stann, that's his bread and butter is stand up, and him being in the military. I mean, what better way than just to go in there, win or lose? I bet he was in the locker room saying, win or lose, I'm going to go out on my shield against this guy. Either he's going to drop me or I'm going to drop him. I mean, the takedown wasn't really an option. So, just really insane. We have our guest right now on the line here. We only got a couple of minutes here. If Jorge, you want to introduce him?
Yes, fighting out of Phoenix, Arizona, we have Carlos Castro will be making his fourth appearance in the ring this Saturday at the Celebrity Theater in Phoenix, Arizona, against Jazzma Hogue, who actually fights out of New Mexico. How you doing, Carlos?
This is actually his coach and his manager, Andrew Soto.
Andrew, how you doing, man?
Good.
Yeah, so we're trying to get Carlos on. What can you tell us about his training, man?
His training went really well, man. His camp went really good for this fight. I mean, I've seen the kid put in a couple good camps before this for his last 3 fights, and each time he's stepping it up.
So, and also, when you see opponents like, how much do you know about Jazzma? Jazzma is, does tend to fight around the region in Arizona and New Mexico. Have you seen Jazzma fight before?
Yeah, actually, I've seen him fight a couple times here in Arizona. I saw him fight a couple Arizona kids actually not too long ago. And the kid comes, man. He comes to fight. He throws. If he's got 1,000,000 punches to throw, he'll throw 1,000,001. That's the type of kid that he is. Just keeps coming forward.
And as far as Carlos, I mean, I did go visit you guys here a few months back down in Knockout Boxing. How have you seen him improve since actually becoming a pro?
Seeing the type of amateur he was, he was an elite amateur. He won 3 national champions as a kid. I'm used to seeing him fight at that top level all the time. And to see him turn pro, it's a learning process. And each fight that he does as a professional, you just start seeing a little bit more and more come out of him. He improves with every fight that he takes. And he's starting to get back to that elite level that he used to be at as an amateur. The styles are different, the opponents are different. Some of the opponents aren't as technical as they would have been when he was a pro or when he was an amateur. So he's starting to see different things, and he's starting to come around. Every fight I see him improve, I see him learn, I see him get stronger, I see him grow a little bit. And, I mean, Jazzma Hogue, he's going to have more than just his hands full in this fight.
Also, do you have any other fighters on the card?
Yeah, actually, I have an amateur female who's going to be on the card. Her name is Sulem Urbina. She's a top female amateur as well.
Yeah. And also, I mean, she's actually fought our top amateur here in Ayana Vasquez. So tell us about the battles that she's had with Ayana.
That was, she fought Ayana twice, actually, and both times was a war, man, you know. The first time they fought each other was under the spotlights of the Pro-Am card as well. Unfortunately, she didn't have the win in that case, but they ended up fighting each other in an amateur tournament not too long after that, and we were able to take home the W. But, I mean, they have so much respect for each other anymore. They pretty much know that they don't want to fight each other unless it's a real important tournament, a real important fight, and they have a lot of respect for each other after that.
Yeah, and as far as just going back to Carlos, just because this guy has, you know, that much potential, you guys are another Iron Boy card. What is it like to actually work with Iron Boy Promotions?
Well, Iron Boy Promotions, they're good. They're good people. They're good people. You know, they take care of us. Carlos is actually signed under Iron Boy, and you know, he's you know, if everything goes well, he's going to be the stable boy for the promotional group, and he should be the one that everybody's going to have to look out for, you know, especially coming out of Arizona.
And also, you know, you've got other guys on this card like Michael Hunter and Victor Castro. Who out of the group, besides, you know, Carlos and Sulem, are you most excited to actually see on this card?
You know what, to tell you the truth, this card is so packed up with talent. You know, any one of those guys could just have one of them fights that everybody's just gonna leave with their mouth wide open, you know, in awe. Christopher Lopez always puts in a good fight. Michael Hunter, you know, I'm excited to see him turn pro because, you know, he was an Olympian, you know, ex-Olympian. The kid, you know, he comes, he brings it, he fights. Victor Castro, he's never left anybody disappointed as well, you know, He's gone almost a distance with everybody, and then in the final moments, he knocks these kids out, you know. And, you know, just there's all types of styles in this fight. There's all types of fighters. So, I mean, we're looking at a real good show.
Yeah. Well, it's Iron Boy 6 there Saturday night in Phoenix, Arizona at the Celebrity Theater. Best of luck to you, Andrew. Thank you very much for calling us. Best of luck to both Carlos and Sulem this weekend.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a good night.
You too.
Cool. Well, that's going to wrap up our show. As always, you can
get
in touch with the show through lowblow505@gmail.com. Also through Twitter through @lowblow. Also get in touch with FightFans Radio through Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Ustream using the FightFans Radio hashtag. Before I wrap it up, Jorge, have you anything else?
Nope, that's it, man. Excited to keep seeing the fights. Hopefully boxing's injury bug's over.
Yeah, I hope so too. Hopefully MMA didn't give it to the boxing side of things, and everybody stays healthy in both sports. So for Jorge Hernandez, I'm Justin Goodger. You've been listening to The Low Blow on SouthwestFight.com, USCombatSports.com, and Fight Fans Radio. We'll see you next week.
Peace.